Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Pursuit Live. I'm your producer, Chris. Dave has the night off. He's not feeling well, and we wish him a speedy recovery. You know, he's kind of a baby, and he's got a little bit of, he's got some sniffles. It just knocked him right out. So, we're not going to hold that against him. Everybody deserves a day off. He's been out in the woods for like 500 straight days and hasn't shot a deer yet. So, listen, he needs a break. We'll give it to him tonight. But our program manager, Rob, did step up to the plate. So please, everybody, give a warm welcome to Rob for sitting in tonight. Rob, thank you.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
And tonight we have a little something different for everybody. Now, this may not be something that everybody is used to hearing on Pursuit Live. Maybe on the fringe we talk about some of these things, but I think we do have an interesting conversation for everybody tonight. And it's something that whether any of us wants to admit, publicly, yeah, this is something we're all into anyway. So please welcome Taylor from RANT Strategies and also Medicine in Bad Places. Taylor, thank you for stopping by.
Not a problem, guys. How's your night going?
Well, I mean, we already touched on it in the pre-show. We're not drinking bourbon tonight. We're drinking beer because we got to work tomorrow. So it's going awful.
Well, you're not drinking bourbon. I am.
That's right. I'm having coffee because I got to go in soon.
See,
nice. There's no drones flying over your your facility there, is there?
Oh man, there's always. I can't tell you how many calls we've now gotten for that.
It hasn't happened here yet, too bad, but it seems like it's inevitable at this point. It's pretty crazy.
It's coming.
But that kind of goes right back to kind of what we were talking about backstage, is the fact of you can't really put your finger on or think of every possible scenario you could encounter, but stuff is just going to come about that it may pose a problem for you, it may not, and you got to at least be prepared as best you can to deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Honestly, so Chris, not to cut you off, we already have a question from the Instagram page.
I mean, if you want to dive right into questions, we can. Listen.
Should we listen? It's an important one, and honestly, this is probably what the entire day is going to be about.
All right. So, I mean, if we want to dive right into a question, and I don't want to get too deep into this. So, Taylor, if just kind of give us a straightforward, brief answer, because I do want to elaborate on this later in the show.
But the point of the lives is to engage and answer questions. So why not?
All right. So we'll go with this. So Dustin from Muller's Archeries asked, how important is it to learn how to use an IFAK and a tourniquet?
Well, if you are doing anything that could possibly cause some sort of severe laceration to your body, then it would be literally life-saving that you should learn how to use a tourniquet.
So like top 5, right?
I would probably say top 2. If you're in the woods, you're hunting, you're doing anything in law enforcement, military, public safety, and there is a chance you could encounter gunfire, whether it be friendly fire from a hunter who doesn't realize what his backdrop is, or from a bad guy, and it could be an arrow, a bullet, anything that could penetrate you. You should have a way to deal with that because you are putting yourself in that position.
Absolutely. So if I can jump in right there, we actually, with what I do, I'm in the emergency service unit. I used to work with Sean. He was our medic on the A team. We recently, just this past week, had a job where we had a barricaded EDP with a crossbow. That's something that we're encountering a whole lot more, but something that could do a lot of damage. That'll go right through a door, right through a bunker, where a bullet's going to stop. A bolt's going to go right through it. An arrow's going to go right through it. So you're absolutely right.
You talk about crossbows and compound bows. I mean, you're getting some of those things with velocities that they are accurate out to 100 yards. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And I'm not a hunter, but I've seen broadheads. I've seen the different arrows they make with, like, those things are devastating to large game. I couldn't imagine having it hit a human body and the damage that it would do.
Yeah.
And then, in addition to we're talking about, of course, we go right to what we do for work and hunting and outdoors and this and that. But how about just driving to and from work or driving to and from your hunt? And deer season is during the winter. If it snows, if it's icy, and you get into a car accident or somebody else in front of you does, it's one of those things you could literally incorporate into your daily life.
Absolutely. I think everybody should have them, in every vehicle, car accidents, everything else. You never know when you could possibly come across something where you're going to have to save yourself or a family member or somebody else's life.
100%. And then what gets me even more is, people will get, and it's important, but they will get so wrapped up in and around the gear and watching reviews and what IFAK should I have and what tourniquet should I have and this one's the best and that one's the best. Or I've also heard a million times where, especially, I don't just limit ourselves to public safety. I like the preparedness guys. I like the hunters as well. And a lot of preparedness people, where they fall short is they'll be like, oh, well, I'm carrying this IFAK or this gear because I don't have any training in it, but maybe somebody else there will, which is fine. But you've already identified a problem, which is a lack of training. So go seek out good training in addition to having the right gear.
Well, I guess we can dive right into a little bit of this. Now, what would you suggest somebody start out? Now, granted, both of you have emergency, first responder background. I have a first responder background and a military background. So, for us, it's something that came as part of the job. But as a regular civilian, what would you say is something, somewhere that your average Joe, any one of our listeners right now that has never thought of it before, where would you say they should start by getting when it comes to training? What is the baby step that they should start on?
So I think the baby step is, especially for what we're talking about and the things that could kill you now, obviously a CPR class, because that can affect anyone and everyone, get CPR certified, 100%. As far as your trauma care goes, the NAEMT, the National Agency of Emergency Medical Technicians, has nationally recognized classes, and they offer a bleeding control course, which that is your bread and butter. Probably you in emergency probably had to go through BCON, bleeding control, and that is the bare bones basics of here's how to evaluate somebody and evaluate what the bleeding is, how to put a tourniquet on, how to do wound packing because you can't put a tourniquet on there because it's in a junctional area, and then how to put chest seals on. So if you did a CPR class and a bleeding control course, you're fairly well rounded at that point. It's albeit a very basic level of understanding. It's at least giving you a good starting point. So
don't immediately go to TCCC and start there.
If you tried to jump into a TCCC class, you would be lost in the sauce. And if there are people out there who are trying to sell you one and you've never had any training prior to it, they're probably your best interest probably is not what they have in mind.
Now, Now, say somebody obtains the minimum amount of training. If you could kind of go through, I guess we'll start with an EDC, like something that you would recommend to anybody to carry, just as a simple IFAK. And for anybody of our listeners that's wondering what an IFAK is, it's individual first aid kit, and you're going to hear that throughout the night. So I just want everybody to understand what that means before we get started. What would you say are some key components to an IFAK that somebody should carry, whether it's on their person, in their, briefcase, backpack, glove compartment? What would you say is something that everybody should start out with?
Sure. Well, first off, I think the terminology, the fact that we are, the people from the military background, especially, no offense, when they say the term IFAK, people get very sensitive to that, to the fact of, oh, no, the IFAK is for me, and I don't use that on anybody else. If you're putting an IFAK and you're carrying that to help yourself or help other people in this environment, that's perfectly appropriate. Please do that. Obviously, and a good place to start, if the Medicine in Bad Places website has a store, before you go and buy anything, make sure it is from a reputable distributor, because if you try sourcing on Amazon, they have found countless times, we have found in our training courses, China has flooded the market with counterfeit, subpar, clones that look really, really good, but they don't hold up. The polymers they're using aren't the standard, and you do not want this stuff to fail in a body alarm reaction that you've never been in a situation, your stress is through the roof, you're trying to save this person's life, and your equipment fails on you. So I'll start right there. Buy your stuff from a reputable distributor. As far as the stuff in your basic IFAC, again, a good tourniquet, something that's TCCC committee approved, which is the Tactical Combat Casualty Care, the military governing board says, hey, these are the ones that we approve. And it's important because there are some tourniquets that are, made in the United States, but they are not proven. And if you try to buy into that, like the ones that are TCCC committee approved are approved for a reason, a good reason. So a good reputable tourniquet, start right there. I have known, I'm sure you with emergency have known, we have known people that have, needed the instance where they had to apply a tourniquet, whether to somebody else, whether to themselves. And for severe bleeding, that is your, first stopgap in an emergency situation. That's what we look to do now, because all the myths of, if you put a tourniquet on somebody, they're going to lose their limb. It's all that has been debunked. They're putting tourniquets on people for 12, 18 hours with no permanent disabilities. And when we're teaching courses, I always kind of laugh and say, the old school EMS people in the room, where are you? People raise their hands, and people remember being taught that, we don't put tourniquets on, it's bad. And I'm like, but in that time, early 2000s, in the 90s, we were still doing surgeries on people's arms and legs. And when you were in surgery in the hospital, how you didn't bleed out and die was that they just put a tourniquet on your extremity and you were fine. So it was one of those funny things where it was fine for hospital, use, but it wasn't good for EMS use. And we finally have gotten over that hurdle. So,
well, I don't want to cut you off there. I think a lot of, because I remember those days when I was a young Boy Scout being taught, unless somebody is literally on the verge of death, do not apply a tourniquet under any circumstances. I think a lot of that pre-hospital care thinking versus, operating room thinking, where you're under immediate, medical supervision. Okay, then they're doctors. They're allowed to put tourniquets on this. Where pre-hospital care, they're not. And I think the real nexus point was the war on terror and the things that we were learning in Afghanistan and in Iraq on the ground, where we were applying tourniquets to guys and leaving them on for 12, 18 hours a day and a half. And the results that we were seeing repeatedly were, as you said, no permanent damage. And, through this combat care and lots of it, pre-hospital care, I think, was evolved. And I can say from the first time I ever took a CPR course to how it is now, it's changed in that 20-year span. So I guess medicine, field medicine as a whole, does evolve, I guess, but a lot really, if there was, I don't want to say other than killing Bin Laden and taking care of a lot of other world problems came out of the global war on terror. If there was one good thing that came out of the war on terror, it was, improvements in pre-hospital care in the civilian world that we learned from lessons we learned on the battlefield.
No, and that is one of those things, it is always sad to me that that's what it takes to kind of get some, real life data. And so, always kudos to our troops. God bless them. Thank goodness they're there. It sucks that we go that way. But if we didn't take advantage of the knowledge that is gained through those situations, then shame on us. So at least we're bettering ourselves, through their sacrifice. And everything comes full circle. Rob, you said Rob, did you say you were a paramedic?
I'm a medic.
You're
regular EMT.
Okay, so EMT, but so you'll remember, mesh trousers were a big thing when I first, I've been a paramedic for 20 years. I've been an EMT now for 24 years. that was like when I first came out, we had mesh trousers. And then all of a sudden, mesh trousers are bad. We get them off and do away with it. Well, now 20 years or 18 years later down the road, evolution has occurred. And it's like, well, we don't do mesh trousers anymore. But now we have these junctional tourniquets, which are basically kind of doing the same thing mesh trousers did, just a little differently. So it's, we learn as time goes on that, some things that we thought were good actually were good and they weren't bad like we thought they were. Kind of like eggs. Eggs were great for you, and then they weren't, and then just the yellow parts were bad, so you could eat the white parts. It's always a debate.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's always going to be that way. It's things are going to change, things are going to evolve. And like Chris was saying, because of the war and learning, as long as we can move on and save more lives, it's really the only thing that matters.
Absolutely. No, that's if there's any old school medics watching this, I always laugh when when I first came out. It's like when I went through my ACLS algorithm for running the cardiac arrest, we had beryllium as a drug that we gave, which doesn't exist anymore. We gave procainamide, which doesn't exist anymore. There's things that just go out of style because we better ourselves with through knowledge and trial and experience. That's why it's practicing medicine. Nothing's definitive.
Yep. Also, Chris, with that being said, Sean mentioned to me earlier that for our guests on this show from now until the end of December, if they enter Pursuit 25 on the Medicine in Bad Places, they're going to be getting 25% off the store, medicineinbadplaces.com. So for anybody that's listening, paying attention, definitely go over, hit the website, check it out. They have really good stuff there. It's important. It's good to get your hands on some of that gear.
No, for sure. And that's one of the things we always try to harp on is again, get your stuff from a reputable dealer. It is amazing to me, kind of diving right into this is I'm sure you're a shooter, I shoot, we won't think anything of dropping $1,000 on an optic because that's what a good optic costs. And we know
you don't put a $200 optic on a $3,000 rifle.
Correct. But
yeah.
But you're also saying there you bought a $3,000 rifle, right? You didn't buy a $500 M&P. So once again, you're spending your money for good gear. But when it comes to medical stuff, all of a sudden, $30 for a tourniquet is just absurd when I can spend $12.99 from Beijing Medical Supply Company.
Yeah, you're right.
So I do want to ask you a quick question here because there's always a little bit of debate in this, and any of my friends that were either Army medics, medics in special forces, paramedics these days, firefighters, cops, it doesn't matter. Right? There's always a little bit of a debate here, and I want to get your take on this. Tourniquet style. What is your preferred tourniquet? Whether it's the soft tourniquet, the cat tourniquet, the SWAT tourniquet, what would you prefer as say an everyday carry tourniquet versus something that would be in an IFAC that's either on your plate carrier, on your in your pack, or something that might be in your med bag? What would you kind of rate these styles of tourniquet as?
So the first one is there is a company out, and it's called like Snake River or something, and they make the EDC tourniquet, and it is basically a slimmed down cap tourniquet that has a couple little tweaks to it that I really like. It also has a built-in chem light that's about that big because when you apply tourniquet, you want to make sure that people see that there's a tourniquet applied. And it's just the fact that they kind of shave down the cap to the point where it just packs up smaller, it's easier to carry, and I think it's a little bit easier to apply than a cap. But then, if that is in first place for me, in 1.5 place would be the cat tourniquet. But yes, I think the first one, I think it's called the EDC tourniquet. This is like by Snake River, I think makes it, or Snake something makes it.
Is that the one that could also go on children as well as dogs?
They advertise that it can. The problem with dogs is, so one of our flagship courses is Canine Medical Operator Program, which I wrote. It's been for no pun intended, it's been vetted by the ATF consulting veterinary surgeon. And he's like, hey, this is all good. So I know my data and the information in it is good. The problem with human tourniquets on dogs is not a matter of the size. That is the tourniquet you're talking about. So yes, and they can only because of how small that it can get, it can work on a dog. I'm not saying it wouldn't work. The issue with human tourniquets on dogs is if you think about a dog's hind legs, they are ovals, right? And their artery is running right in the middle on the inside, kind of just like the inside of your, where your femoral artery is.
Yeah.
Well, when you put a human tourniquet on, because of that windlass in there, when you start cranking it down, all it's going to do is just kind of squeeze the two ends together, and you're not going to get a lot of pressure on the artery where it needs to be. For a good canine tourniquet, you want something that's basically an elastic band all the way around to deal with that anatomy difference. Humans, we're pretty much a cone, so it's easy when you're cranking down to get all that circumferential pressure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's the whole canine human tourniquet debate. But when it comes to dogs as well, and listen, you guys are Outdoor Channel. If you guys are using canines to assist you with your hunt, it's good to have some training and knowledge on how to deal with all of their potential emergencies as well. And believe it or not, when it comes to dogs, tourniquets are pretty much the last ditch effort as far as bleeding control goes on a dog. So kind of your first ditch effort on a humans, last on a dog.
Yeah. Well, and then that's I think pretty big. They're using hounds for mountain lions, pigs, bear. There's a lot of things that these animals can get severely injured. So I think it's important.
And when we see, especially, and people invest a lot of money into their dogs. And there are, there's the classic, hey, your dog is chasing something down and doesn't see the survey spike or the piece of reed bar that was sticking up, and they impale themselves. Yeah. And now you're dealing with some sort of, open chest wound. You have a pneumothorax or a tension pneumothorax going. So how would you deal with that? Or it's just early one morning, you woke up late, you feed the dog, you jump in the truck, you go, and all of a sudden now your dog's bloated and you're 4 miles into the woods. You got to buy him some time.
Yeah.
Now, I do have one question for you on this, because this is actually something I don't know the answer to. And then we did have a question from the audience. Now, when it comes to dogs using, a hemostatic agent like Quick Clot or Celox or something like that, is it effective to use a clotting agent on a dog? And I know Celox is derived from shellfish, and I forget what Quick Clot is derived from, but I mean
the Cheeto sand, yep.
Is there something that maybe we shouldn't use on dogs, or is it okay to use a clotting agent on a dog?
So it is okay to use a clotting agent on a dog. It's perfectly fine. What we put in our canine medical kits is actually, there is a separate stuff which is approved for humans, but so everything that's in our canine medical operator IFAC kit is approved for human use, but it also works for dogs. And what's in there is Celox Rapid. And the reason is if you're doing wound packing on somebody with a hemostatic agent, your combat gauze, your Celox regular, stuff like that, it's usually a 3 to 5 minute hold time once the wound is packed. Celox Rapid is 60 seconds. And we put that in there because if you're dealing with a dog who you can't really, talk to and try to convince to, hey, you need to calm down and relax. Well, let's make this as short of a thing as possible as far as trying to pack the wound and get the bleeding to stop.
Okay. Now
the only thing you can't use on a dog, or one of the big things is, people ask when we do our course, because we go into some much higher level medicine, is you cannot use human blood to transfuse a dog with. That will kill them.
Can I use dog blood to transfuse into me, and will it make me more badass?
Listen, if you can get some sort of transformation going on, that would be, yeah.
So we did have a question from the audience, and I don't want to leave that hanging in the wind too long. This is from our buddy Johnny. He's a friend of the show, and he's also a fellow vet. So He when he was in on a scout team in the Army, their SOP was to place the tourniquet as high up as possible versus a few inches from the wound. Now, what are your thoughts on placement? Now, I know Rob and I, kind of produced a video about this a little bit ago where I filmed and he talked about this. And, I know what I've been taught and my understandings of tourniquets, but why don't you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So plain and simple, the book answer is 2 to 3 inches above the wound. Won't argue that. That's what the experts say. There's your answer. TCCC, get into emergency, especially tactical medicine, it is high and tight. Get it as high up on their arm, on their leg, whatever extremity it is, as high and tight as you can get it, and lock it down. That way, you're not wasting time trying to actually figure out where exactly is this wound, especially if you're in a low light environment, bad weather condition, hot or, warm zone-ish area that you really shouldn't be playing around with. And in the addition to, hey, we put this tourniquet on high and tight. If you do that and the bleeding hasn't stopped, your next course of action is always to apply a second tourniquet. And look at that, by putting it high and tight, you've already bought yourself as much real estate as you can get to, leave room to apply a second one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Once again, I know I brought it up. When I went through the A team, Sean put me through some of the absolute best training I have ever had since being, on the teams that I've been on and fortunate enough to be on. That training was, he hooked a TENS machine up to my arm. I'm sure you've probably experienced this.
Do it all through. Yep.
So he had me put on my heavy vest. It had the throat protector, shoulder pads, everything. And basically he hooked it up to my bicep and he said, you're going to walk through this doorway. It's the fatal funnel. You're going to get shot. He goes, as soon as you get shot, you got to get off that X. And he goes, start getting that tourniquet on. He goes, you got 30 seconds. And I walked through that door. I didn't know what to expect. He had that thing cranked up to 100. My arm was curled up like this. I was screaming because it hurt so bad. And I'm sitting there trying to get the shoulder strap off, get this tourniquet up this arm and tighten it down. And the first couple times, I was not able to do it, and then I learned, I took the pads off the shoulders. I couldn't get my head down because of the throat protector. It's all important equipment that does a job. But when it comes to, could something bad happen? Of course, I could get shot directly in the chest and it'll get caught by the vest, or a few inches up and that's it. It is what it is. But that training, without a doubt, was some of the best I have ever experienced.
So in the last class that the most recent class that we did, which had like 40 people in it, I was thrilled. It's amazing to me that for as long as we've been doing this and for as long as TECC, Tactical Emergency Casualty Care, has been a thing, we're still filling a room with 40 people in a class. And even more to that, we had like 3 repeats in the class. And people come and they're like, dude, there's not another TECC class like this out there. And they like coming back and enjoying it. And we actually had 4 separate lanes that people ran with that exact scenario you're talking about, but we incorporated Sims into it. And it was funny, watching people, they're on their strong side, they have their gun, and, once they get shot and the gun flies out of their hand because they physically can't hang on to it, they just go into this thing where it's like, I've never experienced that before. I can't believe I did that, because everything goes, as Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, who has kind of coined the whole philosophy behind, code black, code yellow, code green, you got some seasoned guys that literally go code black and everything just leaves their minds and they run out the room because they've never experienced it before.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important with what you guys are doing, so that God forbid somebody ever does come into that situation, from what I've heard,
And that's why when we do just, when you're doing the crawl, walk, run thing, when we have people self-apply tourniquet, I won't say a word to them, but we'll put it on, Sean's demonstrating, I'm demonstrating, tourniquet's on, apply it, and we continue talking. Well, everybody in the class is putting their tourniquet on, and without fail, 3/4 of the class before we're done talking will have taken their tourniquet off because it started to hurt their arm and their hands got tingly. And I'm like, guys, like, and you know, the 5-minute lecture goes on. I take it off. I'm like, do you realize we still have our tourniquets on? And the reason being is the fact of you don't want the first time you put a tourniquet on, you know, your bone is shattered, you're bleeding out. This is the worst probably day of your life. And now you're going to put something on your arm that or leg that it's going to hurt. There's no getting around it. Somebody else is going to apply this to you. So why not get used to that feeling? And then the only thing you're dealing with is the sensation of being shot, as opposed to, I really don't like this tourniquet. I don't know what's happening to me. I think this is bad. And I'm shot on top of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And with that, so when we talk about, I think we haven't gotten past tourniquets yet. We're still on that as far as building out our kit, but still with the tourniquet. So I think we've just really made the point of you got to practice this stuff. You practice everything else. You got to practice playing a tourniquet. You got to practice it and not, you know, take the tourniquet out, putting your arm through it like you see everybody do, and they're doing this to get it on. No, when this arm is stimulated or actually injured, you can't use it anymore. So practice it without being able to use it. So you need to buy a second tourniquet because you should not be using your training tourniquet that's going to be getting stressed and stretched and worn out as your go-to real life tourniquet. And some people will get hung up on the fact of, well, orange tourniquets are training tourniquets or blue tourniquets are training tourniquets and black ones are real. Colors don't mean anything. North American Rescue, when they manufacture them, or Medicine Bed Places, when they sell you one, they don't know what you're doing with the tourniquets. That color coordination is for you, your family, your team, your unit to designate what is what. And they'll tell you if your unit wears black as their uniform, you probably don't want to wear a black tourniquet because we've had studies out there that are done and hospital surge drills where you bring 2 or 3 guys in so the trauma care can do their stuff with live people. And tourniquets have been left on people and not found because their black tourniquet blended into the black BDU top with the rolled sleeves and nobody noticed it.
That's a great point.
People will get to me, you know, what it's, you know, in my you know, full-time job, where we operate a lot in a woodland environment, I wear, you know, the Ranger green, very subdued, the whole bit. I carry an orange tourniquet. People are like, aren't you worried that the bad guy could potentially see you if you're doing something? I'm like, well, guess what? If I'm shot, so I'm pulling out my tourniquet, the gig's up. He's already seen me. This is not a good place to be. It's too late. I'm not stealthy anymore. And on top of that, if the orange tourniquet is what he saw that gave away my position, kudos to him on his situational awareness. Like, you're dealing with a legit adversary. So people kind of get hung up on some of that silly stuff that you just can't do. Do what's practical.
All right, I guess we'll move past tourniquets at this point.
Move past tourniquets, yeah.
I mean, listen, we could go on for. I mean, we could keep going with this for an hour. I don't care.
We could.
I like this stuff. So, but I do want to move on to some other things. So in addition, so tourniquet being number one in your IFAC, what would be the second thing that you would put in, like, say, you know, your EDC, either your pocket, plate carrier pack, something that you're going to carry on your person? What would be the second piece of equipment you put in your IFAC?
And again, we're sticking to medical gear because anybody out there that's, you know, preparedness mindset, it, you know, the whole bit, like, listen, number one, you got to be able to defend yourself. So I get it. A good gun, a good knife, and a light.
Yes, just medical stuff.
Just medical. Yep. Number two, past that, again, especially in our fields, you know, I try to stress to the fact of why do we get so hung up on tourniquets and bleeding control? And makes people kind of sit back and think. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, well, number one, it's the thing that we can do the most about, because if somebody is shot and bleeding out, you have the capability to stop them from bleeding out. So tourniquets are big. Number two, when we're working, we wear body armor. So all the good stuff is usually pretty well protected, but our arms and legs are still hanging out there. So if you're going to have a problem, usually it's going to be on your arms or legs, which is why we spend so much time dealing with those type injuries. So Sticking with bleeding stuff, number 2 would be some sort of hemostatic, wound packing gauze.
Okay. I don't want it. We could go down a whole nother rabbit hole with Celox, Quick Z-Fold versus powder versus,
Did you see how generic I kept it?
injectable ones now. It's like, we'll stay off of that. So let's move on to number 3. What would be the third piece to your puzzle here?
So now we're getting past, somebody bleeding out. We're going a little more centric. So now we're going to worry about stuff to the box. So putting a chest seal on somebody, because if you can't, if you bleed out, you don't have blood in your system, you can't survive. At the same time, if you can't breathe, you eventually die. So you can't live with that. So we got to be able to, so this system here is a closed system. It's got to remain closed or it doesn't work right. So any hole that I introduce into somebody's chest cavity or back, because this is one, just because if you get shot in the back, it's not different than getting shot in the front. It's the same thing. So you want to have 2 chest seals on you, because usually if there's one hole or a hole in the front, there's going to be a hole somewhere else.
Now, I will ask a polarizing question a little bit here, because I have a personal preference when it comes to this chest seals. What's do you have a personal preference? Because I like halos. That's me. But do you have a personal preference?
So why do you like halos?
I don't know. That's what I like personally is the packaging, and I'll tell you this: why I like the packaging. It's big, it's easy to grab, it's easy to rip if needed, and where I keep them on my gear, I keep a set in my assault pack. I also keep a set behind my front plates. Don't ask me why. It's basically because they fit there very nice. They're well protected by the plate.
Yep.
And if I need to use them, I know where they are. I know where I can get them. And I don't know. That's just me.
So I know there's a couple paramedics that follow me too. So you're a Halo guy, and if there's anybody else out there that's watching this that has a chest seal preference, weigh in now in the comments. I will tell you. So I am a Russell chest seal person.
Okay.
So number 1, they come 2 in a package, which I think is important, as opposed to some chest seals only have 1 per package. And number 2, because I'm constantly canine oriented and canine minded, the hydrophobic gel that they use on the Russell chest seal is the best that we have found for going over dog fur and still getting a seal. So that's why I'm a Russell guy. So at least there's a method to my madness. I don't want to say anyone's the best, but I'm telling you why my reasoning behind it.
Well, listen, that makes a lot of sense, because there are some guys that are still wearing a sweater when they take their shirt off.
Yes.
I didn't think of it like that. It's now instead of sitting there and now I'm not getting a good seal because he's a little furry too. I won't have to. Okay, I never really considered it like that. So
that's one of those things where people will be like, "Oh, do you carry clippers in your kit?" The old school, medic bag has always had a razor in it for that reason. You're not dry shaving that off of anybody, okay? And the clippers that you're getting, the little, AA battery clippers, are going to clog up like that if the dude's hairy enough or they're bloody enough. Dog fur the same way. It's not going to work. So if you're getting, even those halos with two in the chest seal, what do they teach you to do? Put the chest seal on, rip it off, and you're waxing the guy. Well, that's great. That works. But now you're down a chest seal. Yeah. You only got 1 left in the package.
Well, that's what duct tape and an MRE.
I was just going to say duct tape.
Put the one on the front, on the back goes cut your MRE bag open, right on the back with some duct tape.
We're going to also just taking the tegaderm from the IVs and just sticking them on people.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got tourniquets, we got hemostatic agent, we have chest seals. Obviously, now we've already covered duct tape.
Yep.
And preferably, I do want to preface this to everybody. If you're going to use tape, I will say duct tape is great. Medical tape is great. If you really want to put some kind of tape that's actually going to work and you're not really interested in making it look pretty. You're interested in saving a life. 100-mile-an-hour tape, and I can give you my reasons why I think that is what I would carry, and that is in fact what I do carry. But that is also why I recommend it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on tape.
So yeah, so here's the thing. So there's another product out there that and we get into it, but it's called Battle Wrap. And the thing I like about Battle Wrap is, if you've never seen that, it's basically 15 mil saran wrap, and it's awesome. And the whole benefit to that is, number one, you can crank it down. It's occlusive, so just like your duct tape's going on there. But the biggest thing about, or my biggest reason for not using tape, is the fact of it's not transparent. So whatever's going on underneath of what you just did, you can't see anymore. So is it vital that you're seeing it? Not really, especially in an emergency situation. But is it nice if you're starting to have an issue that maybe you look at the injury site and see if there's something else going on? So that's my whole reason for actually using, an actual chest seal. And this goes back to, and not to go back to the tourniquet hole, but part of what we like to do is, when we're getting this information out there, is, can you make an improvised tourniquet and it work? Sure. It's been proven all throughout history. Improvised tourniquets can work. Can you use duct tape that's, do a chest seal? Sure. Why not? You could take your plastic lunch baggie, tape that onto it. Now you have something that's transparent. You can still see that's taped down. But if you're trying to be prepared for an actual emergency, why wouldn't you have the appropriate gear to do it? Because if we're going that route, especially from the hunting world, could you just, shave down a stick and make an arrow like they did? Sure, you could. It could work. But can you buy really, really good arrows that are intended for that purpose? A much better route to go.
Well, it does make sense. Now, I'll give you my justification for 100-mile-an-hour tape, and you got to remember this is coming from a young soldier in the war on terror. So, number one, the government issues shit. Like, if it's military grade, that means it is of the lowest quality, built by the lowest bidder in the fastest amount of time. So, anything that we were issued, my IPACs, I always replaced it with 100-mile-an-hour tape. And the reason I still carry it to this day is, number one, I'm used to that. I'm comfortable with that. I know I can work with that. But number two, a lot of the things that were in my mind when it comes to the use of that tape, number one, it's going to be bloody. So this needs to stick in wet, sticky, shitty environment. So no matter what, I need this tape to stick, and 100-mile-an-hour tape sticks. It's like Gorilla Tape. It sticks to just about everything. But number two is patient packaging and transportation. If I have to tape over a wound and say I can't get Casevac and get this guy out of here immediately, we may be in contact, and we may have to sit there, and I may have to move this guy around. So my thought behind that is, this 100-mile-an-hour tape, not only is it going to stick in a shitty situation, it's going to stay stuck. Even if I have to move him around, even if we have to move, it's raining, he's sweating, I'm sweating, everybody else is sweating, we have to move through water. No matter what it is, this is going to stick, and it's going to stay stuck. So that's my thought process behind that. I don't know if maybe I'm missing a step, if I'm thinking something too generally or too harsh of an environment type thought. But I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on my thinking behind that, a little critique.
Well, you're definitely not thinking of too harsh an environment, because that's the scrutiny that your gear should hold up against. However, none of that, none of which you just stated, has that tape ever been kind of certified to be used for. So they're not going to guarantee that's going to work. It very well may.
I mean, they use it to repair airplanes sometimes. So
correct. The problem with it is, when it comes to sticking to skin, which is, and kind of gets into the same thing, the adhesives and the glues that are used, because this always comes down to, somebody gets a good laceration somewhere. Hey, can I just super glue this shut? And guess what? I've done it. You guys have done it. You can, but after about a day or a day and a half, the glue's not sticking anymore, because the adhesive that is used and stuff like that is not good for adhering skin, which is why your Dermabond, medical grade glues work for 7, 8, 9 days on people because that glue is specifically designed to adhere to skin, and here's just going into the outdoor community, the preparedness community. This is not any sort of, solicited medical advice. I will tell you, again, veterinarian stuff is pretty good. You cannot buy Dermabond, prescription only, but you can buy Vet Bond, and it's the same color and the same vial and everything else on Amazon for like $30. So if it is a concern that you have, it is a potential option for you. Especially if you have kids that, fall down and lacerate their arm and saves you a hospital trip.
Gonna have to order that.
I don't think that's on the Medicine in Bad Places store. This is not right.
I think maybe Sean should add it. He's gonna have to add it.
It's about information sharing,
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've covered tape, what's next in your IFAC?
So beyond that, so you look at this. We've now addressed bleeding. We've addressed the box and pretty much everything we can do from there. For your basic stuff beyond that, most people at this point would say some sort of decompression needle. But let's be honest, if you're not a paramedic,
I mean, who's really comfortable
not decompressing somebody's chest? Yes. I mean, cool. It's a cool skill. I've done it personally, and it is amazing that it actually works because it's, until you actually do it, it's all relative because you've read it in a book and practiced it on a mannequin. But it is amazing. It works. So beyond that, I wouldn't even go down that role. You go with it with a nasal airway. And basically, the thin rubber tube, you stick it up somebody's nose, virtually everybody can do it. And if somebody is unconscious or, unresponsive, some sort of airway compromise, usually in humans, it's from the tongue. So since we already addressed canines, I'll let you guys a little fun fact. If you've ever seen your dog sleeping like really deeply, their tongue hangs out of their mouth. Dogs' tongues don't occlude their airway. If a human is unconscious and they're on their back, their tongue slides back, it relaxes, and it suffocates them. So it's a current concern in humans, not in dogs. So a nasal airway is a good thing just to be able to insert to open up somebody's airway without having to, kind of stay there with them and maintain them.
All right. Now I'm gonna get into another polarizing topic possibly here.
Oh boy.
Izzy bandage or blast bandage?
Ooh, so, okay. I am an advocate of, just like you were saying, as far as the tape in the military, especially in a tactical situation, you want to do more with less, or at least have things be able to do multiple jobs. Your blast bandage, your battle bandage are very kind of specific in what they do, just like your pressure bandages in general, your Lay's dressing, your Israeli dressing, everything, kind of like that. I said a minute ago about the battle tape, right? So if you're in a situation where, hey, I don't need to pack this person's wound, then if you're carrying a hemostatic agent and you're carrying battle bandage, put the hemostatic agent on their wound, onto your battle bandage, crank it down. You've now made a pressure bandage because you can get that stuff so tight that it's almost tourniquet strength, but it's certainly pressure bandage strength. Or, oh no, I did have to pack this person's wound. So take your hemostatic agent, pack their wound, then you have to secure it somehow. So once again, take out the battle bandage, wrap it around, and you're getting the job done. So that kind of fits multiple roles. I used to be a fan of the lace dressing. I thought that was pretty high speed, but it's very big and very bulky for what it does. So I've kind of migrated to this. Well, I can use my hemostatic agent for wound packing if I need it, or I can use it to substitute the actual padding part or the gauze part of a pressure bandage if I need it.
Okay.
Why? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends on space. In my plate carrier, the IFAK that I actually have on the plate carrier versus my battle belt, because I have 2 different spots where I keep gear, I keep an Izzy bandage. Why? Because it's right there. It's readily accessible. It's small. It's a 4-inch bandage, and it fits in the pocket. Now, in my actual IFAK, one of the H bandages, the blast bandages. Why? Because it's a little bit bigger. I can do a little bit more with it, where a little 4 or 6-inch Izzy bandage, yeah, it's great. I could put it on an extremity, but say you're shot in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I might need something a little bit bigger. That's where that H bandage comes into. So personally, if I had to pick just one, I'm going to go with the H bandage, obviously, because you said, if I take that blast bandage, it's a little bit bigger. It can do more things. So if I have to carry just one, that's what I'm going to carry. But, my thoughts are 2 is 1 is none. So if I'm able to carry both, I'm going to carry both. If I have to just strip down to just one, I'm going to go with that H bandage all day long.
Sure. Well, so speaking, so you said you wear a battle belt, right? So I have to show you. So, and you wear an IFAK on that?
Yes.
Where do you wear it?
I wear it on the back.
Small of your back, right?
Yeah.
So this has been
I'll tell you why though.
Go ahead.
My idea. So on the small of my back, where that one's not meant for me. That is for somebody can roll me over while I'm on the ground, pull that out, use my supplies on me. The one on my chest harness or on my chest harness, that one is for me with extra supplies if I need to put it on myself or if I need to go to it and put it on somebody else. That's why I wear it.
Sure. So there's an issue so this is one of the things I'm very happy about. So about 2 months ago, we released this. The patent's pending. It's trademarked. Everybody wears the IFAK on the small of their back. The issue with that is the most convenient place to wear it. Everybody does it, and I do it as well. If you're doing any sort of patrol work, you cannot ride around in a car with your IFAK on your back. You get severe lower back pain like that. So this took somebody in the industry to come up with this. I don't know how I was the first one to think of it, but it's pretty cool. So I have to show you this.
Well, I will caveat that mine is meant for long distance ruck marching and foot patrol kind of thing, not riding around.
Correct. For the guys in your police departments out there that are on patrol. So I ran into a situation where, I'm in my vehicle, something happens. I jump out to do something higher risk. I'm a paramedic. It's kind of inexcusable for me to not have a med pouch, a pretty decent one on. The problem is there's no good place to carry it. So there's a guy that I work with he makes slings, and he makes some awesome slings. Guys, bought them. The rifle slings are good. Came up with this idea, and I'm like, hey, dude, here's my idea. Can you make this for me? And we came up with the prototype, and we've gone through like 6 generations of it, and we finally have the final product that we released last year at the Ohio Tactical Officers Association conference, and it's been awesome. So this is probably looks like about what you would, your belt looks like, and there's my IFAK. The beauty of this is the mounting plate to it is a thin kind of forming bar that stays on your belt, which this you don't feel on your back because it is super thin. And then this half of it is a mounting plate that's Molly. So whatever IFAK kit you're running, as long as it can be mounted by Molly, you mount it on here, you stick this on your, prisoner cage. We make a passenger seat headrest mount type thing for it. Anything that's metal to magnetic to, you jump out, you stick it on your back. It's 180 pounds of pull when this thing's locked on there. So pretty cool design to the fact of you shouldn't be without your med gear. It's an easy way to put it on and off. And when you need it, it's pretty easy. With that,
That's pretty solid. That's
people have so they haven't been out that long. We've sold a bunch of them. We actually had a police department that order them for their entire unit. They had ordered 2. They tried them out and they were like, "Hey, we want 14 more." So everybody in our unit has one. They've been good. We've also been hit up. That was when I made that or came up with the idea. that was the reason for it. But since that has happened, we had a swiftwater rescue group hit us up for their stuff on their PFDs, like their like bailout ropes and stuff. And they're like, hey, if we get hung up somewhere, we could just pop it off and be freed. So pretty versatile. They're on the Medicine in Bad Places store on the website as well. So one more thing to keep an eye out for.
Absolutely.
All right. So now that we've spent an hour talking about the IFAC, I do want to expand. I know, Rob, you probably have a couple questions and a couple other topics you want to get onto. So I do want to get into a little bit more of the preparedness and training and some of the other aspects here. So Rob, why don't you kind of take us in through a little bit more of what we want to go over in the next part of the show? Because I mean, we'll run this show however long this takes.
Taylor, what were you going to say?
I was just going to, with the IFACs, especially for the outdoor community, pretty much how I would end that with beyond the nasal airway is, everybody has to worry about hypothermia, whether it's 90 degrees out or whether it's 0 degrees out. Like, you always want something, and we could go down what used to be the lethal triad, which is down to lethal diamond, shock, and the whole bit. I'll save your audience on all that lecture there. But most people kind of default to that emergency blanket, that Mylar thin shell that you see everybody with, and everybody usually has one on them. And one of the things I like to stress is the fact of, if you're using that for a survival purpose, whether injured or not, understand that the way that that is pictured on the cover with the person freezing and they have it wrapped around themselves, it's not how those are intended to be used. That is a vapor barrier. So basically nothing can get in, which is why you can use it as shelter if you need to, if it's raining. But also when you're off gassing, nothing can get out. And if you are in a freezing environment, one of the issues you're going to have is you're going to develop condensation inside of that, and it's below freezing. It's going to crystallize and freeze, and then basically freeze onto you, making you colder. So they are a vital tool. Just understand they are important to carry. But there's meant to be a medium, usually like a wool blanket, because wool retains its warmth properties even when it's wet, to have in between you and that Mylar blanket if you happen to use one. That's something that kind of gets lost in translation, because the pictures are always of this person freezing with it wrapped around them, and they think they're going to be good. And they may be good for the first 20 minutes, but if it's below freezing, then they're going to be screwed.
No, I could see that. Absolutely.
We did have a question here in the YouTube chat, and I'm not. It was from Center Mass. I'm not quite sure what this means. Maybe you might know. Will you roll out to help assist in finding Leo's remains?
Oh,
Or maybe Ellie, law enforcement officers' remains? Is that like Leo? Is that a specific person or a law enforcement officer?
So I just did 2 videos on this. Leo DeFore is a 22-year-old hiker who came from Quebec, Canada, went to the Adirondack Mountains in New York, and he was reported missing on November 30th. Because of the weather, they had to call off the search, but basically December 9th, they switched from a rescue mission to a recovery mission, and they're just dealing with an insane amount of snow and stuff at the top of the mountain. And that was one of the things so part of RANT Strategies is we have a command vehicle and we have an operational component in addition to a training component. So when I was putting the information out there, because of resources being limited, I had said, hey, if you would need RANT's command vehicle, or you needed a REMS team, to assist, like, contact us. We will do our best to get up there and help you.
That's awesome.
Okay.
I definitely want to talk to you more about that afterwards.
So we answered that. I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
No, that's like I said, that's a sad situation, because the hiking community was pretty bothered by it. They were kind of going out, and they were actually getting, civilians were getting to be in need of rescue because the conditions are just so poor, kind of adding to the complexities of it for the rescuers.
I think that's also why it's pretty important to check the weather. Obviously, things can change, at the drop of a dime, but possible bad weather, I think I'm going to hold off,
Well, so that whole situation, and this is perfect for, as far as, your hunting communities go. Apparently it's like a 4-hour drive from Quebec to that area of New York. So it was supposed to be like a, hey, I drove 4 hours down. It's 18 miles from the trailhead to the peak and back. So it was supposed to be like a 1 day. He was going to be there and back. So his gear was probably, fairly minimal because you're just not expecting to get caught in there. But it's kind of important to, be prepared. Well, like we said before, for anything. If the drones invade while you're there, you kind of got to be ready because you're putting yourself out in the middle of nowhere where there's probably very poor communication, if any, and you're going to need to be self-sufficient because you're going to be on your own for a long time. One of the things that I do contractually part-time, in addition to my career, is I am a wildland firefighter contracted like paramedic rope rescue guy. So the month of August, the month of September, I am in Oregon, California, Montana, Colorado at a wildfire somewhere. And it's wild, us here on the East Coast don't ever really experience a 6 or 8 hour transport time to a local hospital, like not even a trauma center. It's hard for us to fathom until you're there and you're like, hey, here's your report for the day. Here's where you're working. And, here's your expected transport times. It's insane to us. Like there are still very remote regions of this country that you can get in over your head pretty quick. You have audio on him?
I can't hear you, Chris.
Yeah.
Taylor, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're fine.
No, Chris.
Chris may have to do a reset.
He might. Oh, you know what? Is it because it's an hour?
Nothing.
Nope. Is it because we hit an hour? What? No, nothing.
He's saying no.
So, Taylor, if you don't mind, while Chris is trying to fix this.
Yeah.
I know that you guys train a lot of preppers. I'm guessing that you're getting a lot, or some at least, off-grid people, that are going to need that self-care help. What kind of questions are they bringing to you? What are you seeing with these training,
Yeah. So you know what? So that's a good. So if we back up here for a minute. So number one, I guess I should kind of talk about where I came from and where we're all from here. Even though we're into this already. So, one of the things, so as far as RANT Strategies goes, there's three main guys that make up RANT. And basically, we had all been working for various training companies. At one point, we were all working for the same training company, and we wanted to start, doing more. We're all current law enforcement. We're all paramedics. We all have a pretty significant rescue something background. We were like, hey, here's what we need to be doing. Here's what we should be doing. And they really don't want to hear it. So we're like, well, listen, we should probably branch out and do our own thing. So we did that. We're doing good. We had all that in place. And then one day we're out, and just through convenient timing, we met up with Sean Solar of Medicine Bad Places. We're talking with Sean. We're teaching at this conference, and he's like, oh yeah, he's an ESU guy. He's a paramedic. And, we spent the night out of a bourbon infused, meeting night at the hotel. And it was like, oh my gosh, this guy's one of us. And there's not many, like, we need to team up with him. And from that point on, it was like, hey, this is phenomenal. We need to go down this, go exploring with him, because when we started explaining to Sean what we were looking into, and then what Medicine in Bad Places was doing, we're like, well, this is perfect. We have the exact, we want to do these proprietary courses that we offer. You offer all the bread and butter, build-up courses. We need to come together. And we did. And since we've made that move, it's been seamless. We've been so busy. And we offer courses all over the place. So I can tell you, like, stuff coming, like, we do your basic CPR course. Like we said, that was pretty important. Your NAEMT, which again, nationally recognized bleeding control course. TECC, which is your tactical emergency casualty care. TCCC, which is your tactical casualty combat care. And then beyond that, you're looking at our canine medical operator course, which again, we go from here's how to do an assessment on your dog. Here's how to start an IV on your dog. Here's how to treat for bloat, medications, CPR, intubation, literally everything for your dog. We do a woodland medical course, and it's a woodland course, and you can kind of pick the preference on, hey, we want this medical centric, we want this tactic centric. We kind of go either way on that one. We also offer a live fire medical course. So, and then last but not least, we do, and then we have different instructors that kind of specialize. My whole thing is we do a tactical rope technician course. So my whole, thing on this, I do the canine stuff. And then with the REMS training, which if you guys aren't familiar, REMS is the rapid extrication module support. And that's such a big deal in the wildland firefighting region, because you're going in places that have no support from the local government, or they do have a local government, but it's just so sparse because it's so remote. There's nothing there. So how it was, put to me when I first got into it was, we're doing the stuff I used to, when I worked in FDNY, I was a New York City fireman, I worked in Lower Manhattan. When you had a technical rescue there, you're getting 40 guys minimum showing up. When you're doing this REMS role, there's 4 of you. So the same rescue with none of the people, and you got to be just as competent, just as quick, or even more so because you're in such a remote area. So those are all of the classes that we offer and classes we get into. And with that, when we start reaching this stuff out, it's not one of those things. A lot of people out there, a lot of training companies out there will kind of limit themselves to just training government. And, myself personally, the other guys, like, we are very, prepper has a stigma to it, but we are very preparedness mindset people as well. So by all means, come into the fold. We'll give you all the knowledge that we can to the same standard that we're training, the professionals to. Some of the stuff, depending on the class, is law enforcement sensitive. So some of the classes are restricted, but by all means, the core structure of each course, we will give to anyone and everyone that wants the information.
Here's a quick question, not to cut you off. Where can people find these courses? Where can they go? How do they, what locations? Is it just New York? Do you have them,
No,
do you go to locations? Like, how does it work?
So we have been, so New York is a hub, obviously. Maryland is a hub. Pennsylvania is a hub. So pretty much anywhere on the East Coast, we've done classes for the Pentagon. So Virginia is not far. Anywhere in New York, we've been to Indiana, South Carolina. We're in talks with Florida. We're in talks with Puerto Rico. We will travel to you if we can make it work. And it's funny because some of the times, one of the guys I just talked to was like, hey, saw this course, it was the canine course, really interested in doing it. How can we make it work? He told me a story, and I'm like, listen, dude, let's figure out what our expenses would cost. If we can cover our expenses to get there and do the course for you, as Sean says it all the time, like, I still work full time. This is truly a passion. Sean's retired. It's a real passion for him. Like, if it's not going to cost us money, we'll come and get you the training. So I can tell you, this year coming up right now, we're going to be in Indiana again at the Indiana SWAT conference. We're going to be in Michigan teaching at the Michigan SWAT conference. We're actually doing a ropes course and a canine course there. And we're going to be at the Ohio SWAT conference doing the canine course there. So we'll be all over. And if you're in any of those surrounding areas, and listen, the travel's already being covered by a government entity for us. We're going to be out that way. Hit us up if we can make the dates work. We'll swing by you, save you the cost of the travel, and put a course on for you.
And where can people find that information to be able to reach out to you?
medicineandbadplaces.com. All the courses are on there. If there's not a date listed for an open enrollment, send an email, because what we'll do is we'll start building an interest list. And once we get a minimum amount of people, we will populate a course.
What's usually that minimum amount of people?
So usually it depends on geographically where it's located. Is it going to be airfare? Is it going to be, just a single night hotel stay? We can drive there and it's gas money. Usually we look right around 15 people is the sweet spot. We never do more than 40 in a class, though.
Okay.
Which is, and this is another thing, like, while we're on this topic as far as training goes, one of the big things I always get into is, we have between rant and medicine and coming together, we're probably somewhere around, we're under 10,000, but we're in the thousands of people trained. And, sometimes you'll get these pop up. This is Tommy's Tactical Emporium, and you have no idea who the guy is or where he came from or what his background is. Vet your instructors. Make sure you're coming from a reputable guy. Understand what makes this guy capable of teaching me this information. And if something happens, and they go and vet him, is it going to hold up? And that's the beauty of Medicine Bay Places, who's been around, 15, 19 years. And then with us, and, our backgrounds being vetted, you're not going to run into that problem.
Yeah. No, it's once again, I think this is one of the most important things. And for anybody that's, listening right now, relating it to, for us, the outdoors, I know people that have gotten severely injured, from field dressing a deer, broadheads are so sharp. I mean, you get cut, you don't realize you're cut until you see the blood dropping. There's a lot of different things. We were, this past bear season in Jersey, I went to go resheath one of my knives. It ended up slipping and stabbed me right in the hand. I wasn't paying attention. Shame on me. I was distracted, but, I sat there bleeding, sitting there, trying to stop it. And we're a mile into the woods,
Well, and unfortunately, freak things happen. So I can tell you, this is probably about 6-7 years ago now. One of the calls that I had, that I was one of my first finds with one of my dogs, got called for a missing hunter. And basically the guy shows up at 5 a.m., parks his truck at his mom's house, goes into the woods. Now it's midnight, and it's deer season, so it's freezing cold. Mom calls and says, "Hey, my son hasn't returned from hunting yet. I don't know where he hunts, but here's his truck." It's like, okay, so the dog, we end up going, using the dog, tracking this guy, find him. He went in the woods. He made it to his deer stand at about 5:45, and he says about 5 minutes after that, he fell. His deer stand broke. He fell to the ground, broke his pelvis. His whistle was just out of reach. His phone was just out of reach. So he laid there the entire day. It was like, I was waiting to die. And the guy is literally maybe just over a mile from the road, but nobody's out. Stuff happens.
Yeah, and that's what we've actually mentioned this on the show before, how important it is to let somebody know where you're going to be. Sure. And that's something that we've talked about. Either I'm talking to Chris, my dad, my wife, I'm letting somebody know, hey, this is where I'm going to be. If you don't hear from me, come looking,
Yep.
That's another part of first aid, that's communication.
Well, that's one of my nerdy hobbies is I'm a big comms guy. I'm a big radio nerd. And one of the things that people don't realize is, if it's a lot to digest at first, but if you go down that rabbit hole, a lot of your hunters are using FRS, GMRS radios and whatnot. Well, when you get into the professional ones, like the Motorola XPR 7550s, they will actually have a man down feature. And you can set a timer on those that if you don't press a button every so many minutes or hours, it will automatically trigger an alarm.
Chris, I think I could hear you.
Thank God.
There you go.
Yeah. You know what I had to do? I logged in on my phone. I'm just using that as my microphone. I don't know what happened. I apologize, folks. Dave isn't here. Somebody else had to have technical difficulty. But do you really want to know what the problem was, Rob?
Oh, let's hear it.
All right. So I feel like somebody like Gloria or Barrett hacked my setup and didn't want me to say what I was going to say, but I was trying to say, I hope you heard that, Rob. Wildland firefighters. Just saying, buddy.
I heard it.
Just saying. Do you do it too?
I've dabbled in the past.
Yeah, okay. He was just over in Jersey.
Oh. you guys had a line of duty death out of that though. That was pretty. That was pretty. Yeah. That's Well, once again, who would think New Jersey wildfire, somebody getting killed from it? Yeah.
I mean, I would, but I've been doing it for a long time, so I would have thought that. But
I am limited to I'm jumping on a plane and going out west somewhere.
Yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I think you're not really doing it unless you're jumping out of an airplane to get to it, but
listen, those guys are
listen,
full
jumpers, and listen, nothing against those guys. All right, jumpers are some great dudes, but in my opinion, they're kind of like Navy SEALs. They're kind of prima donnas. They're a little bit full of themselves.
Oh God!
I'm just saying,
dude.
Listen,
we had one of the last fires on. It was kind of like the fire was winding down, so they had like a smoke jumper who was acting as the division, and of course he's wearing his the Patagonia, whatever that color they wear is in this thing. And the guy, he was so bored and so laid back that he was just like whatever, guys, just don't get killed today, just go do your thing. It was awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Chris, what else you got? I feel like we could just keep going. There's so much, it's important.
I could go on and on. I've got no engineering jokes tonight, so I mean we're good to go. We can keep going and going and going.
I am gonna have to go to work in a little bit.
Who wants to go to work? I'm in emergency service.
Friday night, man. Yeah.
I know.
There's nothing happening.
Yeah. My partner's tonight. He's been doing private security for some CEO of some corporation. I'm not going to mention any names in the city.
That has been a hot topic now, and that's and that's one of the things. As far as medicine goes and RANT, there's an operational side. We actually did a PSD / medical detail for RFK Jr. when he was out campaigning, and then you have any sort of executive protection work in addition to the stuff like Leo DeFore. They're I was saying with all the PSD requests that were coming in. None of us could personally go up to New York to help look for this dude, but we're at least willing to help with equipment. So, it's it seems like there's so much stuff and there's so many people until stuff starts to go bad, and then those people get eaten up real quick.
Well, we'll talk after the show.
Yeah.
We'll figure something out up here. Absolutely.
No, I'm no stranger to that. So it's everybody always asks, when I was in New York, where I work, so familiar with if you ever saw that 9/11 documentary with the two French brothers that Robert De Niro hosts, that was my firehouse where I was. It was pretty.
I'm not sure.
Pretty crazy. Yep.
Wow. Chris, what else you got?
I don't know. Taylor, if you could, I mean, I guess while I was trying to fix things, I know you guys were going over a lot of where to access training and whatnot, but if you could just kind of tell everybody where they can find your content, how they can get in touch with you about training, just plug away at this point.
Yeah. So medicineabadplaces.com is the primary one. Everything will be listed on there. If you want to see some pictures of the proprietary courses, I kind of joke with Sean and be like, RANT is kind of the specialized training division of medicine. So, from non-destructive forcible entry, the woodland tactics, rope rescue, canine, that's RANT's bread and butter stuff. You can go to our website, but you're going to get the same answer if you go to Medicine at Bad Places. You can just see some different pictures that are on our site as opposed to Medicine's. We don't have a store, so anything for purchase is on Medicine's for sure. One of the big things I will say, we also kind of covered a little bit. I think one of the things that should also be addressed is, still plugging stuff, the RANT Strategies YouTube page. I do put a lot of training stuff on there. It's really communications centric because I can't really do a training course on communications, but it's one of the nerdy passions that I have, and YouTube is my outlet for that. So if you're into comm stuff, definitely go to the YouTube, the RANT Strategies YouTube page. But I'm going to do a lot of tactical medicine related stuff in the future, just because of the Leo DeFore thing was very, kind of motivating, and It's just, as seasons change, information has to come out. So we're going to do a bunch of stuff as far as cold weather preparedness, cold weather emergencies, things like that. But one of the things I think that we should address is in the outdoor community, you are going into austere environments that are difficult to get to because you want to be in isolation after all your hunting. So there are 4 pillars of rescue that I think people should kind of keep in mind. So the first thing you have to do in order to get to somebody that is injured in an austere environment is access them. So whether that is just hiking in a mile, 2 miles, 10 miles, or hiking in 2 miles and then rappelling off of a, rock face to get to you, or scaling up, whichever the case may be. First thing I do is get to that person. Past that is you have to do your assessment. So if you're doing your trauma assessment on somebody, that's one of the things we kind of get into is looking at a trauma patient, the March assessment is the go-to. That will keep you focused and oriented, doing things in a organized fashion as far as what you should be treating first and going through. If it's a medical patient, because believe it or not, people have heart attacks and anaphylactic reactions and respiratory distress situations, if they're asthmatic, whatever, in austere environments. Your typical normal patient evaluation is then appropriate for that. If it's a mass casualty, well, now your assessment's go out the window and you're going right into patient triage. So that kind of gets the assessment thing out of the way. Once you get past that, you're going to go to stabilize. We have a patient or 10 patients. How can I do the best that I can to make these people not die in the next, however many minutes I have them? Know how to do some basic stabilization. We covered all the bleeding control stuff, kind of the basic trauma stuff earlier on. And then kind of where I was going with this, at a certain point, no matter who you are, what you're doing, you're going to have to transport this person to definitive care. In the tactical austere environment, we just call that extraction. So have a way to move somebody. So if you're going into the woods and you're like, hey, I got my IFAC with me, I'm prepared for a medical emergency, fantastic, that's great. If your buddy's with you, how is he going to get you out if something happens? So there are things like, these like foldable, collapsible, basically material stitched together litters, stretchers that, one person kind of drags somebody out on. So just kind of have a plan as to something does happen, I get to you, how am I going to get you out? So that's always kind of the overlooked fashion of this. And even I've seen in a lot of training courses, people will come in, they'll move to the target, they'll get to the target, they'll treat the target, they'll do whatever they have to do, and then the training scenario stops. It's like, hang on a second, you're missing the most crucial piece of this.
Yeah, getting them out.
Yeah, because it's usually not fun to do. It's not sexy because it usually ends up looking, not pretty. And we're not, we don't think it's important until you're actually there and have to do it. But I can guarantee you, in every emergency, every active shooter situation, every hunting accident, everything else, that person was moved from where they were to a hospital somehow.
Yep.
It ain't like the movies where a helicopter with a hoist shows up at the magic moment and then all of a sudden, dude coming down on a wire to come get you.
Correct. And that's and for the most of that, again, me being a radio nerd, Tom's nerd, like, in order to make any of that work, you have to have a communications plan established as well. So following that PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingent, exigent, like 4 ways to deal with any problems. And you doing the wildland firefighting stuff, if you've ever heard us, declare a medical emergency on an incident, we do the 8 line there. But after that medical report, it sometimes is a little painful because you'll get, the firefighter with a broken ankle or twisted ankle, and they want to hear your transport plan, your primary, your alternate, and your contingent at least. And it's like, okay, we're going to move them by pickup truck down off the line back to the base camp. If that doesn't work, we're going to take them by UTV to this hella spot. We'll do a short haul. And it's like, in the back of your mind, you're like, this is pointless to be saying. But when you step back and look at it from the IMS perspective, and you're, and NIMS, it's like they're just doing it by the book and by the numbers the way that it should be. So for our preparedness people that aren't exposed to that stuff, kind of putting it in the layman's terms is to follow the PACE plan, have a couple ways to do things. That way you don't get stuck somewhere I think speaks volumes, and it's just a good point to drive home.
I know, fortunately, up by us, I'm pretty sure they will go up to West Point area. Chris, you might know. The NYPD Aviation Unit, they will travel out of the city if they get called to do rescue work.
Well, actually, there's a funny story about that.
Yeah?
If you guys have a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were 2 cadets, and this is actually right on point with what you're talking about, Rob. There were 2 cadets that went out rappelling on Storm King Mountain, which happens to be where I live, right over the mountain from West Point. They happened to get caught in a freak snowstorm that nobody really saw coming. They definitely didn't check the weather, so they were stuck doing last man rappels on this cliff edge. They couldn't get off. They were trying to get to them. They were trying to hike in. It was in the middle of a blizzard. Couldn't get to these guys. The commanding general at West Point was trying to get a helicopter. All the Army helicopters couldn't fly. They don't have winches on them, so there was no way to get to them. They called the Coast Guard. The commanding general at West Point was on the phone with the Coast Guard at Brooklyn, talking to some lieutenant, and she didn't want to take the call. She said, "No, we're not coming. No, we're not coming." Hung up on this 2-star, it was 1-star general. Hung up on the lieutenant. Probably a career-ending move. You know who they did end up getting a hold of? The NYPD, and they were like, "Yeah, sure, we'll come get them." And they flew all the way up here, all the way up the Hudson River, came and picked these guys off the side of the mountain. So yes, the NYPD will come all the way up to West Point. And when the Coast Guard, as much as they're like, "Yeah, anywhere, anyhow, any weather, we'll come get them," I mean, there's limits to that. But the NYPD, apparently they don't have limits, and they'll just come out and get guys off the side of the mountain whenever.
Which is surprising because whenever we call for them, they're always down. So
I'm actually shocked to hear that, though, because we've had incidences where
Yeah.
our aviation wouldn't fly, but the Coast Guard out of Cape May, New Jersey would come down and accept the flight. So I personally can't talk bad on the Coast Guard because they've flown for us. That's funny. You have a complete opposite story.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard stories about our aviation unit going down to like Atlantic City, like for something. I don't remember exactly what it was. I could talk to a couple guys at work, but I know they'll travel.
Have helicopter will travel. Yeah, just call them. Yep, you never know.
Those guys are some of the absolute best. Like it's incredible when we do, fast roping and rappelling out of the helicopters. Those guys are awesome.
Well, and that's when you talk about stuff like that, most people, when you're getting into the preparedness community, your outdoors community and stuff, when you're getting into, hey, doing a 9-line, doing an 8-line, talking on radios, especially because mostly all that stuff is kind of centric around aviation assets as far as medevac goes. They're like, well, I'm never going to do that, and you may not. Fair enough. Until a Hurricane Helene hits your neighborhood, and you are now cut off from the rest of the world, and none of the emergency responders can get into there. The only way you're accessible is by helicopter. So if you're the person who has a radio and knows how to use it, all of a sudden you are the JTAC, impromptu JTAC guy for your town. So it's one of those things I've always kind of came back to the fact of, yes, there is too squirrely, but I don't know where that line is, because if you can dream up the scenario and say, look, it's happened here, so why shouldn't I be ready to deal with that in some fashion? I think you're just kidding yourself, and you're burying your head in the sand.
Yeah. 2 questions. One is, how long is the dog course?
Dog course is 16 hours. So we do have a 1-day, 8-hour course. I will say the biggest problem though with that is, as soon as we do that 8-hour course, we get approached and say, okay, well, what didn't I get in this? And then they come to a full 2-day course. So I'll tell you to save yourself the step, come to the 2-day course and get the whole thing.
All right. And then the second question is, how many hours is your class on 25 and 26? Also 16 hours, 8 and 8?
25 and 26.
Yeah. January 25th and 26th. I guess you guys.
Yes, that is the 16-hour course.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Awesome.
Yes, that's funny because you know the dog medicine stuff is probably our biggest requested thing because not many people do it, and we have made a really good reputation for ourselves because we've had at least two normal system medical, like human medical directors come to the program, and at least four like what would be their equivalent, like veterinary medical directors come to the course. And it is amazing the results of people developing like aviation transport protocols, sedation protocols, working out the logistics as to releasing narcotics to the paramedics for veterinary care after having come through our course. So it's one of our like proudest courses, and it's completely proven.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you for what you guys are doing. You know, more than anything.
No, man,
You know,
this is awesome. Thanks for having me on. This is great. I like you know how it is. You get into that public safety world and public safety bubble, and we don't have any friends outside of it, and we don't really, most guys don't want to deal with anybody outside of it. And we're kind of like, no. If you're hungry for the information and have the desire to be involved with this, come on in. Like let's learn. And a lot of times, we'll be in a class and end up, some doctor that will be sitting in a class. We end up learning stuff that it's like, oh yeah, we never thought of that. Can we use that? And sure enough, we do.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Rob. I know I'm not a cool emergency service guy. I'm only an engineer, but I'm still a friend, buddy. It's cool.
Chris, you're one of the smartest people I know.
Thanks, buddy. I needed that to get through my Well, with that, I don't want to keep everybody here too long. Taylor, thank you for taking the time out to come sit with us tonight.
No, this is awesome, man. Listen, any small minutia that you want to go down to a rabbit hole on, you let me know. I'm your guy.
Well, listen, let's make this part one.
Well, that's what I was about to say. There's probably going to have to be part two to this because
100%.
Now we're talking about the IFAC, and I almost feel like we're just going to have to kid up one day and sit here on camera and just start.
We could do that too. Absolutely.
See who gets their tourniquet on the fastest.
Sean will win that. If you probably have seen him do it, but yeah, I don't know how he does it.
We can keep going. I can keep talking about this.
All right. So again, Taylor, thank you for taking the time out. This was a great chat, and I know we blew through our usual time limit. It's totally cool, but let's make this part one of a series, if you will, where we can continue down the road on this. I think that there's a lot to cover here. There's a lot more information, even at the base level, that our viewers in the future who will watch this can really benefit from. So I think that it's an important part, as you said, for outdoorsmen and outdoors women that's not really touched upon too much, and I think that we should continue down this path. So
no, absolutely. Yep.
Taking the time.
I appreciate it, guys. No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
But with that, everybody that tuned in tonight, I want to thank everybody who participated in the chat, everybody who's going to watch this in the future. Taylor, I just can't say it again enough. Thank you for.
No, sure. Oh, and hey, don't forget to remind everybody if they're all of a sudden motivated to put that IFAC together, they're getting 25% off on Medicine in Bad Places' website.
Yep. Now until end of December.
End of December. Yep.
There you go. And listen, it's important. I carry one. I carry one every day. I carry one especially while I'm in the woods. If I'm out firefighting, I got one. If I'm out cutting wood in the backyard, I have one close by. It's important to have this stuff, and even more importantly, it's important to know how to use it. So please do yourself a favor. Get trained, get equipped, be a better person for it. That's really the matter. So again, Taylor, Rob, thank you guys for joining tonight. Everybody who's watching this tonight, everybody who's going to watch in the future, thank you. I do have one announcement because we didn't make it public, but the winner from last week's giveaway. All right, we did have a couple of entries, not a lot, but we did have one winner for the Moultrie camera, and that is Sarvi Enterprises. We're happy to see that Sarvi won. He's a supporter of the show. We like to give back, and as Dave always likes to say, it pays to watch. So last week we gave away a camera. This week you're getting codes for medical gear. You can't lose here.
You can't lose there. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you everybody again for watching. Tune in next week, Friday night, 8 p.m. Fortunately, Dave will be back. I will not be. I will be on my vacation. Maybe I'll stop by for a few. We'll see how the night's going. But, you'll be in capable hands with Rob and Dave. I know the show won't be so fun without me here. It happens. So, it's just bear with us for a week. But with that, everybody, please, everybody who's going out this weekend, who's still out in the woods, good luck, be safe, and we'll see everybody right here next week. Thanks a lot.